brute force. If it doesn't work, you're just not using enough. You're listening to SOFREP Radio, special operations military news, and straight talk with the guys in the community.
To another wonderful episode of SOFREP Radio. I am your host, Rad. Thank you again for tuning in to those of you that have followed us. And if you're new, welcome to the show. Today's guest is pretty cool. We're going to talk about it in just a second. You probably already know who he is because you clicked on the link and his name is in there. However, I want to tell you about the merch store, sofrep.com/merch. Go check it out. We got new stuff coming out. So be one of the first ones to get it. Tag me in it. SOFREP Mafia, hashtag SOFREP Mafia on the internet. The other thing we have is our book club, and that's sofrep.com/book-club. In there, you can find all sorts of reading material that has been designed and curated by the special operations guys and gals behind the scenes of SOFREP for you who likes this world and this community that we are in right now. So without further ado, I have the Traverse Project main man, Austin Shamlin, on with us today, and we're going to talk about the Traverse Project. Now, I'm doing the waves with my hands. If you're listening, I had to really work on the word traverse. Or traverse, because I'm saying traverse, right? I'm from Utah. I'm so sorry. It's traverse. And welcome to the show, Austin.
Thank you so much for having me today.
No, it's cool. I'm glad that Cyrus Norcross, a mutual friend of ours, is like, yo, Rad, you should get my man on and have him talk. So shout out to Cyrus, right? Yeah,
he's a great
and he's also, I noticed, on your team's profile. If you go to the Traverse Project, Traverse. If you go to
the amount of people that do the same thing, you're not the first. Don't worry about it.
I think we're going to make it memorable. People will be like, it's the Traverse. The Traverse Project. Cyrus is part of the faces of your team. You're part of the faces. You got quite a few faces on there.
We do. It's I think people just kind of connect with our mission and just want to get involved. And
tell me your mission. Tell us your mission. Let's just hear that right now.
Yeah, so we combat human trafficking, and we do it a little bit different than everybody else out there. You want to get into the origin story?
Oh yeah, What? Let me choose you over them. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it that your organization is doing differently than the other organizations? Because there are organizations out there that say they are combating human trafficking, but is it like us on the outside of the organization might look at it and say, oh, it's just another organization trying to create itself to be a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
But when you start reading about what you're all about, you can see obviously that you guys have meaning and heart into what you want to do. So please let us know what you're the vocal point and we're listening. So go ahead.
So the name, we'll start with the name, right? Traverse Project. Yes. It's because when you traverse something, it's difficult, right? And that's where the name came from. So it's difficult for the victims of human trafficking. It's difficult to fight this. It's just difficult all the way around, right? And so that's why we came up with the name that we did for this organization. My background is in law enforcement, and then I spent like 80% of my career working for PMCs in every place that's been on TV for the last 25 years, right? But when I left government work in contracting in 2016, I went to go work for a rescue organization, right? And in the human trafficking nonprofit space. And very quickly, when I was a cop, I realized that we weren't going to arrest our way out of this problem, right? And then when I went to this nonprofit side of it in 2016, I realized pretty quick that we're not going to rescue our way out of it. It's just kind of like mowing the grass, and we can get into what I mean by all that, down the road.
It's just never going to stop. If you have grass, it's always going to grow, and you have to always manicure it.
You're out there every Friday mowing it, right? Or every Saturday morning mowing.
Right.
And so
human trafficking is not going to stop, like you said, since King George banned it before we went to war with them in England to become America, right? Absolutely. A lot of people don't realize that America, it was all about, the tea and the taxes and dumping it into the harbor. But really, it was King George put out a message saying, no more slavery, because he's like, no more, because he's like, it's bad.
Which is funny because, the United States in the 1900s had to force the UK to stop colonizing, which is, a force of labor trafficking, right? Yeah.
Since Genghis, I mean,
absolutely,
dude,
yeah.
Look how long they've been colonizing.
Every population in the world has been trafficked, right? By our terms, right? Whether it's labor trafficking or not. My oldest sister, is actually adopted, right? And so she is Vietnamese. She left Vietnam. She was trafficked out of Vietnam 3 days before Laos fell. And
in the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this has been, part of my DNA before I was even a sparkle in my daddy's eyes, they say, right? It's and this is either a testament to how stupid I am or true love, but I was probably 10 before I realized that this Asian woman was not related to me by blood, right? So I'm serious. I remember having a conversation with one of my other sisters when I was like 10 years old. She had to break the news to me. So anyway.
I feel you on that. I feel it because my friends were all Samoan growing up. We had Samoans in California in the church that we went to, and we'd all take baths. And I'm like, well, how come they're not getting it off? And I'm not, when do I get my dark? I'm just like little 6-year-old me.
Yeah, you don't know.
No, I thought this was my family, my brothers, no.
Yeah, it's amazing, like how, I think it's a testament to true love, right? You love your adopted family that you grew up with. I still love my sister very much. She just had her 3rd grandson. So it was a couple of hard years for her, but it was a couple of hard years for her, but she came to the family and came into a very loving family. And we are one big happy family. So anyway, I kind of got off. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, was she adopted through the pipeline, or was she really kind of, extradited out of Vietnam, like trafficked out with love, but it's still.
No, it wasn't love when she left Vietnam. It was, she came to the United States as what's referred to as an indentured servant. And, it's a form of debt trafficking where you just never get out of it. Right. And so she was here in the United States being a victim of trafficking. My mother was a foster mother at the time, and she came through the system through CPS or Child Protective Services, and then was placed with my mother, and she is the only child that my mother she never left.
Wouldn't let go. Yeah,
she wouldn't let go.
Her. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
And so when my mom moved from Missouri back to the DC metropolitan area, Kui came with her. And so, it's just, it's a really great story. And it's just amazing that I ended up in this career field because of what happened to my sister. Right. I kind of snuck it up and throughout my career working overseas and developing in conflict zones, we see, you were in the military, right? We see every form of trafficking in the various places that we spent. In Afghanistan, we all know what happens, right? We all remember the stories of the special forces major that punched the guy in the face and got, all the bad stories that happened because of the trafficking situations and the really bad stuff that we'd see. I spent a lot of my time in Haiti. And there you see it everywhere, right?
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And so Haiti, I've spent the most amount of my career in.
Wow.
I went there in 2010, and I'm divorced now, but my wife at the time would joke with me and say, "You got another family down there. You're there so much. There has to be something going." She's joking with me, but it was just. I really love Haiti, and it's really tragic what's going on there. But anyway, I got off on a tangent here. So. When I left government, 2016, finally done with government, I went to go work for this rescue nonprofit. That place, you just learn very quickly that mowing the grass is never going to stop the grass from growing. All right. And so I was there for about 5 years as the director of international operations. And 2022, it was a super busy year. We had a 9-month-long investigation in Dominican Republic, which resulted in the rescue of 83 Venezuelan and Colombian women out of the Dominican Republic. About 20-ish Dominicans were arrested, and we repatriated those 83 girls back down to Colombia. Obviously, we couldn't send them back to Venezuela with everything going on there, right? But And then I went down, I met with their version of the FBI, and it's this young 28-year-old police captain. And she had 4 investigators that worked for her, and she had over 700 cases of Colombian women that had been trafficked out of their borders internationally. And she had no resources. Like, she didn't even have enough money to send her investigators from one part of the country to the other. And, I said, what do you need? And it was data, analytics, like force multipliers, right? And so I went back to my boss at the time, and this is no slight to him, it's no slap to the face to him, but it's just the way the nonprofit world works. Donors want to see the stuff that we've all seen on Instagram or TikTok of they want to see Navy SEALs busting open doors and rescuing little kids, and that's great and all. And there's a lot of organizations out there that do it. I'm not a fan of it. I guess I would consider myself an expert in this field, and I don't think that those things work.
The door kicking aspect of it, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the rescue, the door kicking. I don't think it works. It's mowing the grass, because that's where we stop. Then it's the raid, it's the rescue, and then we're like, okay, it's over and done with, right? And the reality of this is transnational organized crime. So when I went down there and I went back to my boss and said, this is how we need to support the Colombians with all these cases, with data and analytics. It was like, we can't raise money off of that, right? And he's right. It's hard. It's super hard. It's the worst part of my job. And so I left. I was fed up with the organization. I was fed up with the industry. And I remember calling a bunch of my colleagues at C-suite level in different organizations and pretty much saying, like, you suck, we suck, this needs to change. And I left for months. I left, I think it was in October, and I think it was December, right around Christmas time of 2022. And one of the donors from my previous organization reached out, and he said, I'm going to fund the startup of your organization because this is the route that it needs to go.
And that's right. He wants to go. Yeah. He's probably got funding, and he's like, well, what am I putting it into? And if he hears you and he's like, well, that's not where the money should be going. I want it to go to the lane that you're going to get into.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm just getting from, the donor. So good job on him.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I'm actually going to see this guy tomorrow. This guy is, he's in the mission, right? And he wants to find real solutions that are going to stop the problems. And so I started Traverse Project, and it was me and one other guy. And we flopped around. I think it was 2 weeks after we started, and one of my very first board member said, hey, you need to come to Houston and do a presentation in front of all these, fairly wealthy people. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm even going to present. We're 2 weeks old. I don't even know what the hell we're going to be doing. So I went down there, presented, did the best that we could. It didn't result in much, but it was good practice. And it took us about 6 months to really figure out how we were going to do things differently. And how we were going to not only do things differently, but how we were going to make actual impact in solving the bigger issue. And so, we landed on combating this threat through data intelligence. And, it's not just collecting white paper type research. This is like actionable intelligence that we can give to the frontline defenders of this problem. Police, international organizations that have sanction authority, things like that. But people, I hear one of two things when we talk about human trafficking from folks. It's like either the city they live in is the worst city for human trafficking, or that doesn't happen here, that happens somewhere else. And neither are true, right? It literally happens in every city, town in America, every city and town in the world. I could take you and I could jump on a plane right now. You could pick the city anywhere in the world, and I guarantee you we'd have a better than 80% chance of finding a Colombian woman for sale.
I bet you. I mean, and that's sad. The bet is sad. I don't mean to say I bet you that that's facts. It's just that's a sad situation.
It's a very bad situation.
And like you said, it is here too, and even in good old Sandy, Utah, where I'm at, right? Where you think, oh, hey, we're the 34th safest city. That might be just the best place to do it, where no one realizes it. It's like, it doesn't have to be like the slums. In fact, it probably isn't even the slums. It's people with a lot of money wanting a pet human.
Well, and a lot of it, so there's different categories of human trafficking. My organization focuses in on sex trafficking. There's labor trafficking, which is a very complex issue that happens all over the world in supply chains to
Sierra Leone, all over the place,
everywhere,
dude. Oh,
everywhere.
bro, I mean, like mining some kids.
Absolutely. Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
Indiana Jones, back to work.
Right.
Back to work.
So, sewing shoes together, very popular shoes. I don't want to say any names because I don't want to get sued, but sewing very popular shoes or very popular clothing together that is manufactured outside of this, our borders.
Right.
It happens in supply chains. And again, it's no fault to the organizations or the companies that manufacture this or, that sell this stuff, that their brand is on, and it's not this one, I can tell you that. But organizations that their brand is on clothing, it's not their fault. They can only do so much to fight that, right? It's everything from things that we hold in a.
Let me say this: like a major brand company is saying that they're like 100%, there's these companies out there that say like they're eco-friendly, they're 100%, sustainable, all their goods come from a certain place, and they may be told that throughout the whole entire process of them evaluating it. But hidden underneath the layer of lie to them is some kid in the coal factory or somebody doing that job. Yeah. Right. Oh, you have to cut every single avocado. There's no machine to do it. So that's a human touch on every single avocado.
Absolutely. So so we don't even touch labor trafficking. It's such a complex issue.
Yeah, so much.
But there is no, like, when there is a child or there is a woman being forced to have sex for money, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, that is a bad thing. So we really concentrated on that. So it's, we like to, and we're not one of these gimmicky kind of like rescue organizations. We're there to support law enforcement or with actionable intelligence. And the cool thing is, like, here in the United States, our law enforcement is extremely capable. Most of them is extremely capable of handling pretty much any crime sets out there, right? If they don't have the capabilities, there's a state agency that has the capabilities. I think they can request, federal resources to come in and help them. So for the most part, there are some areas, we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we get into specific programs that we're doing. Sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're good.
But overseas, you have, and I mean, if you look at like the current administration that's just come in, and how they're stopping stuff at the border right now, and the executive order that hit drug cartels and is designating them as foreign terrorist organizations, right? We know, the special operations community knows this, law enforcement community knows this, that drug cartels and terror organizations do have connections. Like, we know that for a fact. And I can tell you that drug cartels and human trafficking absolutely have connections. And so a lot of these actions that the Trump administration is taking is really good to combat this stuff.
I'd like to see him go after modeling agencies.
Yeah, I don't know specifics about that, but like,
well, I mean, like we know that, like Epstein and all those guys, they're all human traffickers, and like P. Diddy out there, he's all going through this whole situation, but they all use modeling agencies.
Well, and I think that's a great point of some of the domestic trafficking that's happening here in the United States, right? When you're dealing with situations like Epstein, where it's very clear years ago.
We already know. Yeah. No one can say it's not.
No, it was very clear that the sweetheart deal that he got down in Florida from the U.S. attorney that ended up having to resign out of the first Trump administration. He it's clear that this was sex trafficking of minors.
100%. Yes.
And then, I mean, it just continued. And I remember hearing that news. I don't remember what year it was when he flew into JFK and the FBI met him there and arrested him. I don't remember what year that was. Maybe
like 2008 or something.
Yeah, it was more recent. I think it was under the first Trump administration.
Because he got off. They slapped his hands, didn't make him serve prison, and then he went back to doing his normal routine.
Right. Exactly.
And then they captured him again, and we all know what happened at that point.
Yeah. So that's when I remember hearing that story. And it was, the time when he was arrested and killed himself or whatever in federal, the holding facility. But I remember hearing that and been like, finally, they're doing something. Who did he piss off that this is now happening? Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, and P. Diddy, right? Here's another guy. Was that last year that they raided
I'm going to presume he's innocent, okay, because we have due process, okay,
Absolutely.
but the bro's got a lot of stuff going against him. So I'm just using him as an example of like, hey.
Absolutely. What I find very interesting about the P. Diddy case is that, and I don't know a lot of the details of that, just what's been reported on the news. But when you have a lot of these famous people in his world that have gone to these parties or whatever, and they're coming out and they're saying like, hey, I'm worried because I'm afraid he's going to try to detract attention from him by making up stories about me. And it's like, that's interesting to me, right? Why is the client list not been released from Epstein?
Right. And also, why do we not think that P. Diddy has turned federal witness?
I mean, there are so many, these cases are so insane to me.
You know what I mean?
And so we can get into the craziness of these type of
well, it's all sex trafficking, that's just here in the US, Americans.
Not only Americans, I mean, Prince Andrew was,
of course,
the U.S. attorney at the Southern District of New York wanted to speak to Prince Andrew about this Epstein case.
Of course.
And he did not come, right?
No, he just paid 12 million pounds to stop the story because he was innocent. So 12 million pounds. I think that's what he paid.
Again, I don't want to pass judgment on anybody because we live in a great.
Oh, there's photos. There's photos of him with the girl, dude. She's 17.
I totally get it. I actually interviewed one of Epstein's victims just me and her on a call for 3 hours. And I mean, the names that came out of, I don't want to mention any names because I don't want to get sued, but the names that came out of her mouth that she encountered on the island or in different, situations, I mean, will blow your mind. And so it's crazy, right? And
I'm not on the list. I'm not on that list.
I'm not either.
But there's people who I really liked when I found out that they visited that island. And I was just like, wow, I watched all of his movies. I used to watch her talk show. I used to, this, that, and the other with all of these different people who
and I want to be clear. Like, I don't think that everybody who went to that island was involved in nonsense. But
like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton wasn't involved in nonsense 8 times. That's what it was. That's what we're going to say. You're going to say he wasn't involved in nonsense. Think about everybody that went there for that guy, everybody that went there for Epstein on his private plane, which is still actively flying. Well, was until the president became president. Yeah, it's crazy. Just the circle of influence. And now, the president's been reelected and put into power, and he's got everybody in like the DOJ and everybody out there doing feelers and just doing whatever for the country, quote unquote. And here you are trying to do the right thing for people who are literally being human trafficked. And I feel like there might be people trying to like thwart you from finding the real information. You got to be.
So I'll say, I truly do believe that President Trump is the first president that has focused in on human trafficking. Ivanka Trump, when she was a senior advisor, whatever her position was at the White House, this is a passion of hers.
She was the daughter.
Correct. So her and her husband, Jared, are very passionate about this. President Trump, during his first administration, created a White House task force on human trafficking. And he also put somebody at the White House as the human trafficking, for lack of a better term, czar, right? Or coordinator of all efforts. That is the first time it's happened in history. So there are certain presidents that come in and put this much money towards human trafficking. And then there are people that come in and start just packing, doing that layered approach to combating this problem. Same with governors, right? There are a lot of governors out there that just they throw the kitchen sink at it, right? Everything at it. And then there's governors that are like, okay. Right?
Yeah. Like here in Utah, we had a company that kind of like folded within.
We can talk about that.
There's a company here. I don't really know much except that,
I can give you all the details on that.
Yeah. And it folded from within here.
They're still around.
I don't know why you got to drive a Camaro with your logo all around I-15 by my house. Right. What's the Camaro doing? Yeah. It's like, where'd that come from? I would see that driving, and you have to understand, we're passionate towards that cause as humans. Like, we don't want others to be suffered. My father was a Green Beret. So his motto was Deo Presso Liber, which is to free the oppressed, right? And so I'm a big believer in freedom of choice and the freedom to move. And if you want to do something, you do it, but you don't have to make me do it. That's freedom of choice. So you want to get a tattoo, go get one, but don't give me your tattoo unless I want it. So I just don't understand how donating money to a cause that's supposed to be just and good. And then I see this guy, I'd rather see him driving around like a Ford truck or something that could go off road. I don't know, not a Camaro with a logo all over it, hey.
I don't know the specific organization you're referring to. There is, out of Salt Lake, there was probably the largest counter human trafficking organization. Okay. And
I'm touching my nose. I'm like, you're on the money. Yeah, I'm touching my nose. If you're listening and you're not watching the video, I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Okay. Right. Yeah.
So there
just look up Utah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't mind talking about it because I do want to make it, this year you're going to hear any podcast that I'm on, any, interviews I do, I'm going to make sure that I inform donors of what they should be looking at, what they shouldn't be looking at.
That's right.
So, the worst part of my job is raising money to combat human trafficking. It's the worst part of my job. I hate going after people and saying, please give me your hard-earned money. And this nonprofit industry is the only industry in the world that we can do everything right. We can, have the most successful programs out there and still go bankrupt, right? It's not like our money generation is not based off of how great we're doing the things that we're saying we're doing.
No.
It's based off the generosity of our fellow man, right? Or corporations that are donating to us. So it's really frustrating to me when organizations come out and they say, hey, we're doing this. And they give the donor this sex appeal, right? I'm using air quotations if you're listening, of this industry, right? Every donor wants to feel like they're part of the mission. And I get that. They want to see kids being rescued, Navy SEALs busting open doors. And this is nothing against, the soft community. It's just, it's not our approach to do the rescue mentality, right? But this organization that you're specifically talking about, there was a movie that came out in 2023, big blockbuster movie that was in all the theaters. I think domestically it made about $180 million, which was supposed to be based off of the founder of the organization you're talking about.
Right.
In Salt Lake. And it's called The Sound of Freedom, right? Everybody asks me about this. I can tell you, we are not a part of that organization. We have nothing to do with that organization. And in fact, that organization's board of directors fired the founder 2 weeks before that movie came out. And it's because there are allegations from, I believe, 8 different women. And you can Google Tim Ballard and New York Times, and you can read all of the allegations. It's pretty horrific shit if it proves to be true. And that's jacked up too, because again, Austin, I want to believe like in what you're saying to you. Like, here, if I had $30 to donate, and again, let me piggyback on what you just said about like profitability in this industry that you're doing. I run businesses as an entrepreneur and I do retail. I buy a product, I mark it up a little bit, I sell it for that, maybe give a discount on it, and I take that profit and I put it back into it. What you're doing is you're not really getting any money back. No.
This money just goes right into the situation. And so that's where a donor comes into play, because it's not profitability you're after. You're just after sustainability of the mission so that you can continue to do the missions consistently with funding. Otherwise, there's no funding. Exactly.
Right.
And so that's where these donors that you're getting pulled into 2 weeks into your career are eager and chomping at the bit to donate. And they're like, are you the right guy to donate to? Is the Traverse Project the place that we need to put our funds? And
absolutely. So when you have a situation that happened with Tim Ballard and his former organization, it undermines trust in the entire industry. And just to be clear, we knew that there was. I'll keep myself out of a courtroom. We knew that there was smoke with that individual for many, many years before all this stuff came out. And I personally always said, something is going to happen with this because they were promoting that they were involved with things that they were not involved with. And honestly, it's donor fraud, right? If you're telling somebody that you're doing something and you're not doing it, you're misleading, and it's a criminal offense to do that, right?
I've talked to those guys before, several of their cadre during promotions and like things that we did, donations back in the day when everything was like kind of level, or it seemed like it. And then and I mean, and let me just be clear, like so I do war games on a large scale here in Utah, 200, 300, 400 people show up.
Wow.
And so what we did is we said, hey, everybody pays $25 and all proceeds go to X organization here, Salt Lake City. This was like 2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe so probably a little bit later than that if it was this organization, but yes.
It's the same organization. Oh, 100%. Yeah. We were helping them out. We did 4 different annual events. Like we did one and one. I mean, we probably donated, everybody in the community would pay $25. So 400 people times $25. And then they would show up to the desert where we were wargaming to collect the check. And they would just split. They say, hey, thank you, everybody. We can't tell you what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing stuff with this check. So when I'm driving up and down the freeway and I see that Camaro fly by me, I am just like, bro, no way that our 4 years of annual donations to you afforded you to buy that ZL1 Camaro and wrap it.
Well, and it gets even worse, right? Like the organization from that movie, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was $180 million gross for the movie domestically. None of that money went back to the organization.
No.
So they fired, they fired him, right? They brought in a whole new board. They brought in a new CEO. I'll leave it there.
It's just a little late, It's like, change your name, go to the Z Corporation or something, man. Stop calling yourself Blackwater. Go to Alphabet Group. I don't know what to tell you. It's like, are you guys this guys? No. We're Alphabet Group.
Well, yeah.
What do I know?
No, I don't want to bash other current organizations.
We won't.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something different, though. Let's talk about the fall of Afghanistan for a second. All right.
Sure.
Let's talk about human trafficking during that situation. So I've got
it wasn't just that; it was the entire time we were there. I mean,
correct. Yeah. But like specifically, I had acquaintances coming to me buying 5 plate carriers. I'm like, why do you need 5 plate carriers? You're not playing airsoft war games. And he's like, I'm going somewhere else and doing something else. And I was like, oh, I see. And then I find out like interpreters are locked behind enemy lines and they're Afghani and they're interpreters and they want to go get their terp out, their interpreter to rescue them, right? And to steal them out of Afghanistan and then bring them to America. And I'm like, well, here you are saying one thing, like don't traffic, but then you're going and doing the traffic.
Yeah, I mean,
so how do you justify? And then I asked him, I said, okay, let's say you got your guy out and you got him into a different country and you smuggled him out because you have to smuggle these people out of that Afghanistan. So now you're literally going in and smuggling out somebody and getting them out. A friend of mine, he's former SAS. He was captured. They beat his feet for like 3 or 4 weeks. I interviewed him on the show as well, but he got 400 people out.
Wow.
So I said to my guy, I said, what if that same interpreter escaped persecution on his own, made it to the Mexican border? Because here's what I get. Oh, they deserve to come to here because they fought with us. Oh, we should have them in the U.S. because they're from here. And I'm like, well, but technically they're Afghani. Technically, they just did a job that they chose to do. And that's the turf that they deal with. So what if your interpreter in Afghanistan snuck out because everything was going down, got out, and said, I'm going to make my way to San Diego, San Ysidro border, bro. And I'm going to come over that way. Does that person still get to come over that border? Does that person still get where do we draw the line on who's coming in and who's not?
So, I've done a bunch of podcasts and interviews where kind of the immigration versus trafficking issues come up. And, a lot of our politicians like to use illegal immigration and just kind of loop it in with trafficking. And it's not factual, right? There is illegal immigration and then there is trafficking. And you can have a case of someone who's being smuggled across the border that turns into trafficking. And I can explain how that works, but specifically with Afghanistan, I think the difference would be, all those guys. Go ahead.
Would the interpreter and his family be able to come too, or just the interpreter? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so
those are. I mean, those are big issues that. So I think the difference is with trafficking a human being. My interpretation would be that you are doing a bad thing to make money, and I don't believe that those guys that were helping get people out were doing a bad thing for money. I think they were they were taking a really shit situation and pulling people out. Like, I had terps that they're still there, right? I just had one of my terps, I think it was the last year, who just got approved by CIS, I think is the agency, custom immigrant, whatever it is, citizen immigrant, whatever, that just got approved to stay in the United States, which is great. He came in on a civ visa, but I think that was just a really bad situation, and I wouldn't necessarily say that that's trafficking a human being, but because they're not doing it for bad intent, right?
But it is trafficking a human being, and you are trafficking a not national human being into America to save them from persecution in another country, which is what we're saying at the border right now. Is there's a lot of people trying to escape political persecution, sexual trafficking persecution, and they're trying to get out. And like, where do we draw the line on who's coming in and who's not? Who's deciding that? And why are guys that are so adamant against human trafficking okay with bringing those guys back, but not? I'm just confused.
Well, and I think the situation now is going to be a lot of those people that came in illegally, right? Regardless of whether they came in from El Salvador or Afghanistan. And the reason, I think that most people come to the United States through, whatever the term is now that we're using, undocumented, illegal, whatever the term is that we're using.
Probably undocumented, Yeah, I think undocumented because, the guy that I know who's from the Northern Alliance, he lives here, and
right. But like you said, it is illegal to come across our borders without going through the process.
Correct.
Right? And so you are committing a crime when you come across our borders. So I think a lot of those people, regardless of the reasons they got in here, it came to the United States. I think a lot of those people are going to be deported here under the current administration, unless they set up some sort of thing that So we don't work with we don't touch any of that stuff. Well, like I said, what we focus in on is sex trafficking, and so where an illegal immigration issue can then become a trafficking issue is, and it's probably about 10% of illegal immigration that turns to some sort of trafficking, is coyotes that also work for cartels are trafficking people over, and it costs money to do that, right? $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 US to do this. And so when you have a child that's coming across, how did that child pay $5,000 to $15,000 US to get across? So it becomes like a situation where, don't worry, we'll take care of it on the other side. And then all of a sudden we have 300,000 kids that go missing. And, one of my biggest issues before was under the first Trump administration, we were doing DNA testing. And then they stopped that under the Biden administration. So if you came in with a child that has a different last name than you, and there's how do we check to see if you're family, or how do we check any of that?
Yeah, well, how do you immigrate here? Like the Statue of Liberty's scrolls, that she holds at Ellis Island there. How do you?
Yeah, that's an immigration issue that we don't focus in on that at all. It's
well, like the Irish were totally trafficked, into chicken factories, and when they first arrived, they were considered like just blah, and they were totally, we have
there was a lot of indentured servitude here in the United States when it came to Irish immigrants that came through, and there was a lot of during the slavery days of the United States, right? That there were a lot of indentured servants that were white.
Right. So, that's what I'm saying. Like, we have a bad track record. Yeah. America itself.
Well, I think the world. Okay. Itself, right?
Agreed.
Because, if you look at not to get into,
like slavery, right? That's totally
we had 500,000, roughly 500,000 slaves here in the United States, and Brazil had 13 million, right? So, the entire world suffered from this issue. I'm not making an excuse by any means of what happened, but the entire world suffered from this problem. Great Britain colonized half the planet, and
dude. Iraq, as we know it, was redrawn by the Ottoman Empire. Exactly. It should be Kazakhstan or Kurdistan.
Yeah, the Persian Empire. Everybody, the Romans, everybody had slaves. And I don't think sexual orientation or color or anything had anything to do with it.
Hey, the pyramids don't build themselves, bro.
Right.
Okay.
Well, those were aliens, I think.
Right. I got to do that with the aliens, right? And I only want to smile through this because it's a tough conversation to have.
It is.
And it's real, and again, aliens or not, I'm sure, the pyramids don't build themselves.
No, for sure. Right. And
the cotton fields didn't get picked by themselves. The plantations on the tobacco fields didn't get picked by themselves. The chains that people were made to wear around their necks that weighed like 20 pounds were over their lips.
And today there are more slaves in modern slavery today.
Jeez. That don't realize it or what? It's just like
no,
is
I mean,
there's minimum wage?
50 million slaves across the world. And that covers roughly 28 million in the labor trafficking category, which then the subcategories are organ harvesting, sex trafficking, agriculture, labor trafficking, all those things, right? And then there's the remaining is like arranged marriages, which is a form of slavery, right? You take some child who's being forced to marry a guy our age, right?
Bro.
And things bad.
I live in Utah.
I don't know.
Let me tell you something about Utah. Okay. 14 years old, these kids are getting married off in the FLDS, the Fundamental Latter-day Saints. So there's the Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons, and then there's the FLDS, who never agreed with changing the doctrine of the church of multiple wives, etc. And so they kind of live on the outskirts, but those outskirts are now encroached with people building houses around them because they're looking for land. And now you have populations in the Salt Lake Valley that are just, these people are rich. The polygamists that had the property, they sold it to developers. Now they have huge houses for like 20 kids with one door. You see this big house.
I think you're bringing up a really important thing to kind of segue into. Is
please.
State laws change. So one of the biggest issues that we deal with in human trafficking is that nobody is saying the same thing. The definitions are different. There are some states here in the U.S. So at federal law level, nobody under the age of 18 can consent to a commercial sex act, right? So that means regardless where I live, not too far away from, I have an airport, and I live in, close to the nation's capital, and one of the airports here has a hotel district, and there are teenagers that are prostitutes, right?
Yeah, here too.
And the county police say, well, they want to do that. And it's like, you can't tell me that a 15-year-old wants to go do this. And it doesn't make a difference if they do want to go do this. It's against federal law. Federal law says nobody under 18 can consent to a commercial sex act, right? So that is trafficking by definition. But then there are places here in the US where you have police departments arresting prostitutes. And that's kind of like arresting the crack addict for having an addiction. Right? It does not solve the war on drugs. This is not solving the trafficking issue by arresting prostitutes. And I don't remember the exact number, but it was greater than 70%. And it essentially said that greater than 70% of prostitutes at some point when they got into this career field, that they were forced into this career field, right? And that is trafficking, right? So 70% or greater of prostitutes are victims of human trafficking. So you've got some police departments that are still arresting prostitutes and calling it a human trafficking arrest. It's not solving any issue. You've got I use this example with most of my talks. You've got a situation where, like, a 65-year-old man loses his wife to cancer. He gets lonely at some point. He goes and solicits an escort, right? And let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, that escort works for herself. Is not being trafficked.
Right.
She is, does this because she wants to do this.
Full choice.
full choice, right?
Full choice, yes.
And if that 65-year-old man is arrested for that, he gets caught in the act of soliciting this. In some states, he's being arrested for a human trafficking related offense, right? And it's like, this is insane to me. Let's start really like digging into the problem. Let's go after it. And I'll give you a great example. So we were given a case. We are based in Houston, Texas, even though all of my folks work remotely, but we're a Houston, Texas-based organization, and we were given a case of a convicted sex trafficker, and I don't remember the exact charge, but it was sex trafficking by force or something like that, right? He lives in the suburbs or in the suburban area of Houston. Again, registered sex offender because he's been convicted of sex trafficking by force, convicted felon. And so we got this case, and it had one victim that we knew of. If I remember correctly, it was in Florida where she was. He's in Houston, Texas. And my team digs into this case and finds out, no, there's 11 victims throughout the United States, and he is making over $1 million a year.
Like
over $1 million, but see that our generation called it pimps, right?
Yeah.
This guy is a human trafficker. He is by coercion or force or any number of other means. This is what happens when I think the average American looks at these girls and says they're just prostitutes or they're just escorts. That's not the case, because some of these girls feared this guy. And so that's coercion when you're forcing somebody to go do this.
And I'll tell you the reason why I also pick on talent agents kind of, is I knew a guy back in the late 90s in my acting career. He started up his own agency. He wanted to represent a lot of actors here in the state. We were all friends with him. No one thought nothing of it. He was older than us, but some of the girls would say, like, when they were one-on-one in his office, it became more like, oh, hey, you want this part or you don't want this part, No, but that is exactly another situation. It's preying on their
the most vulnerable people
dreams. They want to be an actress or an actor. It goes boy, girl, whatever you want. Okay, the whole color spectrum of a rainbow. See, I got that in there. So I'm gonna say right now. Okay, so you never know whose style is what when you see them to your face. That's one way, but behind the closed doors. And so this guy got a really bad reputation, and that's why I'm like, wow, I see these guys, like who we were talking about earlier in the show, who has his own island. They had a modeling agency. It just kind of like, hey, come to us. The other guy who's locked up trying to prove his innocence, Diddy, modeling agency.
Do you remember the movie Trafficked with Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones?
Oh, I think so. The
one that really long movie. Michael Douglas plays the drug czar for the United States. Catherine Zeta-Jones, I think her husband was like a massive drug trafficker and was arrested. She took over the business. Anyway, in the movie, Michael Douglas's daughter gets addicted to, I think it was heroin, if I remember correctly. And this is the drug czar of the United States, right? A presidential appointed member of the cabinet, right? And she ends up becoming a victim of human trafficking. Now, when we were all watching that movie back in the 90s or early 2000s, whatever it was, nobody looked at it like that. They were just like, here's some girl that's prostituting herself to feed her addiction.
Right.
And it's like, no, this is where we're wrong.
Right.
If you watch the part where Michael Douglas goes and bangs on this guy's door in the middle of a lower end neighborhood or a lower income neighborhood, and this guy answers his door and is having sex with the girl. Somebody's having sex with the girl for so she can get her fix. It's all coercion, right? And so that's where. But if she was arrested, right, it would have been solicitation of prostitution in most states. So when I was talking a minute ago and I said we're all saying different things, all the laws are different.
Yeah.
In our industry, the new term for child pornography, we don't say child pornography anymore. We say CSAM, child sexual abuse material, because the movement was that, or the push behind it was that saying child pornography implied that there was consent there. And I get it, but all federal law says child pornography, right? So when somebody is charged with something, it's child pornography, not CSAM. So we're trying to like change all this stuff, and we're not even talking to each other. This industry, is so siloed when it comes to nonprofits, and this crime set is the only crime set that nonprofits play such a big role in. I mean, we are NGOs. We are non-governmental organizations, meaning we are doing a government function or a function that should be reserved for the government. Right. So
I'm just kind of shocked still that you're so right. It should be totally should
absolutely.
Be, and I'm sure there's some kind of a team, but it's only if they stumble on it. I don't know if they're like
well, there is. So on a federal level, right? You have the FBI and Department of Homeland Security investigations, right? Which is similar to the FBI, except HSI is mandated by Congress when they were created to do smuggling, trafficking, all of this stuff, right? So this is the mandated agency that should be handling any human trafficking cases, domestically or internationally. And then you have the FBI, they just dabble in everything, right?
Yeah.
And
their name says it all.
Yeah. And so, but there was recently a memo that came out under the previous administration. There was a memo that came out that made human trafficking cases so hard for the case agents to investigate that essentially they got almost, and I'm not speaking for the FBI, obviously, but almost got out of the business of human trafficking cases. And so they've moved into, so HSI, the problem with them is they aren't funded the way the FBI is. So, when you're talking about the FBI, they have more or less a 1-to-1 ratio of analyst to agent. When you're talking about HSI, DEA, or, a lot of the other agencies, it's like 1 analyst to 24 agents or 26 agents or 22 agents. When you get into the state level law enforcement, it's like 1 to 50 investigators. You get down to the local level, and it's like maybe 1 at the whole department. Right. So one of the great things that we do at Traverse is when we partner with law enforcement is we kind of bridge that gap, because we are an organization full of analysts, and we have access to just unbelievable amounts of data that we just kind of look at in different ways. So we take all kinds of data, and we can get into that in a second. But so we can provide, once we kind of layer that data together in, old school cop work, right?
Yeah.
Sitting in the car, binoculars, camera, notepad, stale donuts and coffee, and telling bad, dad jokes to each other for 12 hours. We don't do that. Like, my guys sit on a laptop and they can pretty much see all of this stuff from data. So we can, without getting into the secret sauce too much publicly here, but we have access to commercial data and telemetry data and all of the good stuff, right?
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah.
And we have access to this. Law enforcement should have access to this, but they don't have the analysts to be able to do it. And it's so expensive that law enforcement agencies just can't afford this stuff. It's donated to us because we're a nonprofit, which is where that kind of non-governmental organization aspect really does help law enforcement.
Yes.
But
yeah, you don't really have a leash on you like they do.
No.
They're like, hey, man, I can't go after this because it's not in my jurisdiction. You're just like, well, I'll go across the street.
Well, and see, what we specifically do, a minute ago, we talked about how siloed everything is.
Sure.
And how everybody's kind of recreating the same things.
Right.
We stuck in our lane, and we said, this data intelligence is our lane. We're not going to recreate this. We're not going to recreate this. If we need this or need that, we're going to partner with organizations that do that really well. But the one thing that does apply to us is that some of our evidence is used for court cases, or should be used for court cases.
Right, because you're getting it.
Right. And we're turning it over to law enforcement. So we have to be very careful about because me as a private citizen, my organization as a private organization, we alone cannot violate your Fourth Amendment rights, because only the government can violate your Fourth Amendment rights. However, if we partner with law enforcement, then there's an argument to be made that we are acting as agents for law enforcement. And so then the rules do apply to us. So that's where it's really good to have an ex-cop who was an executive that says, no, this is the rules that we have to stick with, right? So even us, we just can't do this vigilante stuff that a lot of these organizations that you see raising money are doing. It is not leading to a solution. It's leading to make you feel good. But at the end of the day, when a bad guy who is trafficking a child does not get put in a prison cell for the rest of his life and gets let out on a technicality, or, you know, whatever the case is, or you get arrested because you put your hands on a bag. There's an Instagram profile.
Right, dude.
They're doing these, what we refer to as a John op. They're pretending that they're a John, right? You know, in the terms of solicitation of prostitution, that they're a John, and they're getting these, or that they're a little kid, and they're getting these men to meet them at Walmart or whatever. And then they're smacking the shit out of these people. And it's like, okay, what are you doing? This guy is still a pedophile, right? That guy is never going to be arrested off of what you did. And now you're going to be arrested because you just assaulted this guy. What good did you do?
Right. And just making awareness and it causes a bad situation for what you're actually doing.
Right. And I get the sentiment behind what they want to do. We
I
all want to smack the shit out of these guys and feed them to alligators, right?
Right.
But the reality is, all of us doing this job all have the right intention. We want to stop people from hurting children and women, right? Just because we are good people. This is why we joined the military. We became cops or firemen or whatever the case is. But, you know, I was on Dan Crenshaw's podcast, and I said, when you went through BUDS, did they teach you anything about rules of evidence? No, they didn't teach you anything about that.
No, right.
So we have to build cases. We have to work within the system in the limits that we have in the United States. And our judicial process, I still have a lot of confidence in it. You know, there are some screwed up things that have happened with bad cases, or, you know, bad evidence, or whatever the case is, right? Where people get off, you know, when they should be going to prison.
Like Epstein.
That guy should have served the rest of his life in prison.
He shouldn't have had to go back. He should have already been in.
You're absolutely correct.
That's all. I'm just pointing that out for the listener, for like who we're talking about here, like that kind of a thing, right? Like,
absolutely. You were absolutely correct.
And his cohorts, the Maxwell, or the lady, she's in prison.
Yeah, and I don't remember how many years she got, but but when a judge says, and I'm doing this from memory, so please excuse me if I'm wrong. I'm sure somebody will fact check me here.
Funny. Go ahead and comment down below. I dare him.
But the judge in Maxwell was her name, right?
Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah. His girlfriend,
right, said something about that they couldn't release the list because it would be too detrimental to public safety, or something along those lines, right? It's like,
let us judge that.
What are you talking about?
It's detrimental to them. Yeah, that's what it is.
If it was detrimental to a federal investigation, okay, I'm good, right? If these people are under investigation for sex trafficking, go for it. But it's been how many years?
Bro, what's the investigation stalling on? You know, it's like, we don't want to say anything because we're investigating this further. It's like, you already know.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have left, but I really want to talk about one big project that we have going on.
I'd love to hear that.
Okay, great. So how I met Cyrus is Native American. And
Navajo.
He's Navajo. That's exactly
right. What's up, Cyrus?
That's right. He is a great dude.
Yes, he is.
And such a soft-spoken, like gentle-hearted guy. I really love him.
But a ranger with night vision, and he will
he will kick open your door and CQP the shit out of you, right?
Bro, yeah, he's great. He is.
So I met Cyrus because, back in, we're in 2025. So beginning of 2024, we wanted to look at doing a domestic project. And, obviously coming from law enforcement, I know that cops can be very territorial, and you don't want to step on their toes, because they really do. For the most part, they're really great at what they do. So we wanted to find law enforcement that really needed our help with data and actionable intelligence. So we looked at what is a great law enforcement agencies, right, in the United States that don't have resources. And we looked at tribal law enforcement. Yeah. And tribal law enforcement, the complexity of jurisdictional issues on a native reservation is insane.
It's I was going to say something bad. It's ridiculous, is what I was going to say.
We're not allowed to say that anymore.
I'm not going to say it, even though I am it. Okay.
We're all on the spectrum, brother.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like you have some states that tribal land is state jurisdiction. You have some state, and they're called, it's a 280 state or a non-280 state. And then you have some states that the tribal lands are federal jurisdiction. And you have some jurisdictions that, and then the jurisdiction of sentencing, like for example, in Cherokee, they can sentence somebody for a maximum of 9 years in prison. That's it. So if you have somebody who's committed a homicide, the most they're getting is 9 years in prison, but you would hope that they get a federal sentence. It's so complex between each nation that I don't even understand all of it yet. We're still, digging in and learning as we go. But anyway, so in early 2024, we decided we wanted to support a tribal program. And because they suffer tribal, it's called Indian country throughout the U.S. Like all of the tribes. Indian country suffers from a problem that it's called different things, different places, but the federal term is MMIP.
Sorry.
MMIP, which is missing, murdered indigenous people. Right.
Yes.
And so you're talking about trafficking, homicides, addiction, like everything. It just covers so much. And so we really wanted to partner with tribal law enforcement and tackle this issue, because it is a really stupid issue to have here in the United States, where you have people that could be murdered or go missing, and nobody has the resources to look into this stuff. So we are piloting so how we work programs is every January we sit down, we say, these are the programs we want to do for the following year, and we take a year to concept these programs out. So that we are extremely thoughtful, because this is super complex stuff. Internationally, you're talking about geopolitics and all these other nonsense things that kind of play into it. So we took all of 2024, started building out this program that we refer to as Task Force Red Hand. Red Hand is you might have seen it, the red handprint over the face.
Yeah, over the face.
Right, signifies MMIW, MMIP. It goes by a few different things. Navajo Nation calls it something else. Missing and murdered relatives, I believe. It's just called a few different things, but all meaning the same thing. And so we are piloting a project in Oklahoma, and we have several Native nations that have signed on board that support this program. We have the state of Oklahoma Attorney General's office that signed up to support this. We have local police. So we've created this public-private partnership, and the intent was to not have a siloed approach to this, but have nonprofits, for-profits, academia, law enforcement, and other government bodies kind of come together. Everybody bring their specialty to the table, and really create a program, a full, in government we used to call it a government-wide or a whole of government approach to this one problem. So it's kind of a 3-tiered system. The first one is education and awareness. So we have University of Houston that is partnering with us, who is going to be partnering with tribal colleges, which are equivalent to like a community college, to develop curriculum so that those tribal kids that are going to those schools are going to be pushed out into their communities and teach this awareness and education programs, right? It'll go to community leaders, students, and their parents to kind of give them a full scope. This is the reality of what MMIP, all the issues that kind of surround it. That part does 2 things. The first is we wanted to encourage the next generation of fighters in this, and get local young kids involved in the fight in their communities. And the second thing is hopefully we're going to stop the next generation of victims.
Yes.
By doing this awareness program. The second tier is our interdiction or our enhanced law enforcement solutions. So one of the biggest issues that we saw in tribal country or Indian country was tribes were not communicating with each other in their own states about trafficking or other issues that fall under MMIP. And so we wanted to create a system where everybody was kind of talking to each other. So we'll be building out a database that's backed with machine learning and AI, that the more data we pour into it, the better the insights are that come out of it. So then we can start targeting like, hey, there seems to be a lot of young people coming from victims, right, coming from this tribe or this area to another area, whether it goes into casinos or shale oil camps or any variety of different things that could potentially be popping up. Cartel issues. There's a lot of cartel issues happening on tribal lands because you have small police departments that don't have enough resources to police their entire. I mean, these reservations are massive, right? You're talking about 13 counties, 17 counties. I mean, they're just massive. And then you have like a small amount of cops that work each shift. So that's one thing. The second is we'll be standing up an operations center. So any tribal cop from any of the jurisdictions that we partner with can pick up the phone 24/7 and say, we've had a murder or we've had a missing person. Here's all the pedigree information that feeds it into the system. And our targeters, our analysts will go to work right away, 24/7. And that will give them, exactly. And that will give those cops actionable intelligence to turn a body recovery into the rescue of a human being and bring them back home to their parents and their family that love them. Right now, so just to give you a quick statistic on that, the last real data that we had on a national level was 2016. There was 5,712 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people, right, nationally. And of that, the FBI investigated 116 cases. 116 cases. Right?
5,000. Is it just manpower?
It's a combination of things. I'll be really honest. So I did an interview with Native News Online, and I think that I said something very similar to what I'm about to say. It's that Native Americans are forgotten people. They have historically been forgotten people in this country. Yeah. And we just do not provide the resources. They have the jurisdictional complexity. There's issues with a lot of non-natives that live in and around the reservations see addiction and alcohol abuse, and they say these people are just bad. Every time that we have something bad that happens in our town, it's these people. I mean, I've heard stories. There are police officers that are targeting Native Americans when they come off the reservation, right? And it, like, I get targeting behavior. Right. But targeting the people, it's just, and I don't want to give cops a bad rep here. Like,
just because you're native doesn't mean that you're a bad person. And that's kind of what they're just like they're profiling. Let's just be real.
Like I said, I always give cops the benefit of the doubt. I'm a former cop, right? I always give cops the benefit of the doubt. It is a very difficult job. So I don't want to put a bad connotation on this. I think it's just decades of like bad blood between the reservations and non-natives.
It's tribes saying you can't come on our land, cop. And the cop's like, well, this guy just escaped into your land. And they're like, well, then we'll handle it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a combination of so many issues.
Well, if you're white and you're on the land, they can't arrest you.
That's true sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the jurisdictional complexity. It was for a long time that tribal police would not investigate homicides. Because if it turned out the suspect was non-native, they could not investigate it.
Yeah, right? I was talking to Cyrus about that.
It's
Cyrus is like, yeah, Brad.
Man.
He's like, we had so much crime. Once they realized that we couldn't arrest them on our land, he's like, crime just exploded with people just coming in and just doing whatever and then just leaving because the tribal cops are not able to arrest a white guy.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a matter of like, sometimes it's just as simple as like just a pissing contest between native and non-native cops.
Agencies.
And so, agencies, right? And it's just decades of bad blood between people. And some of it is one side's fault and some of it's the other side's fault. Yeah. But one of the biggest things I wanted to accomplish with Task Force Red Hand was to build those bridges.
Yes.
Because I truly believe in humans, right? And I truly believe that like all of us are just trying to do the same thing. We're trying to get food in our kids' bellies, provide a safe home to them, send them off to school so that they can have a better life.
Everybody wants that.
Everybody wants that.
Right.
Everybody. Right. So I think that if we can kind of break down some of these walls and Traverse Project can be kind of the go-between until we can get those folks talking. then I think we're just gonna have it's just gonna build that bridge, right? And we'll start solving a lot of problems.
Well, your call sign should be Bob the Builder now because you're building.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because my last name is Shamlin, and Bill, what was the guy from the infomercial that sold the
ShamWow?
That was my call sign in Iraq, unfortunately.
ShamWow.
So, yeah, it was ShamWow.
Come clean all this up, ShamWow.
He's very excited. So the third tier of this is aftercare, right, and survivor care. And we are not a survivor care organization. It is one of those things that, like, if you do it poorly, you can really, you're taking somebody out of a really bad situation. And if you do it poorly, and there's been a couple of organizations we may or may not have talked about earlier that did it poorly for a number of years and just didn't care. I wanted to make sure that we were being responsible and did it really well. So we partner with organizations.
Yes.
And so when you bring somebody out of this situation, whether it is addiction, prostitution because of human trafficking, whatever you're surviving, right, that we're putting you into a path for success moving forward. And so we partnered with Randstad USA, which is one of the largest staffing companies in the world. And we've partnered with Annie Cannons, which is a fantastic aftercare organization. And both of them have similar programs. The Randstad program is they have a 35-week program where vulnerable women can be placed into their program. The first week, they're learning about building resumes and LinkedIn profiles and things like that. They go through, they graduate 35 weeks later, and Randstad hosts essentially a career fair with all of their customers. So you're talking about Google and Nike and Amazon and all of their customers, and they place them for employment. And then Annie Cannons does a very similar thing. They're a new partner, so I don't have all the details on how long their program is, but they teach people essentially to be computer engineers. They're teaching them coding and all this great stuff.
Awesome.
And so when you graduate their program, they also have career placement. And those folks are going off to super high paying jobs, right?
Oh, yeah. They're curating them for those positions.
Exactly.
There's an employer like, hey, let me talk to you about your program.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get me 2 students that graduate your program, I will hire them.
Absolutely.
100%.
So with the Randstad program, they had a woman that was trafficked. She went through the program, went to the career fair, got hired into an HR position, made her way up to management, and just last year bought her first home. Right. And to hear that kind of path to success, that's what I wanted for Task Force Red Hand. And so, it's super important. This is a first of its kind program in Indian country. We're going to Congress here next week, I think, and pushing for congressional funding for this. We've got a lot of just amazing partners. I didn't even talk about our tech partners that are in that tier 2 of the law enforcement solutions, but we have amazing partners there, and really giving us access to just unbelievable data, building out our infrastructure so that we can support this. And I'm really stoked about it, and you can go to our website, traverseproject.org. All of our programs, all of our leadership, we try to be as transparent as possible to the public. So it's all on there. This is, and just to be clear, because I've gotten beat up a couple of times about not being native and kind of leading a native project. All the leadership on Task Force Red Hand is all native, all of it, right?
For that exact reason.
Well, I worked in Afghanistan, I worked in Iraq, I worked in Haiti, I worked in Somalia. And what I learned very quickly was, people refer to it as the white savior complex, right? Or the Superman complex. We don't suffer from that, right? So what we like to do is create programs and processes that really solve a problem. And when I was overseas, I learned that first, probably the most important thing is to shut up and start listening a little bit more and add value where you can. And where we're adding value is data solutions, processes, things like that, bridge building. But this needs to be a solution that natives are leading the charge on. And what our intent is that with 3 years, 4 years, we have to, I don't want to put a timeline on it, but somewhere around that time, that we will be handing this project off to a native nonprofit that will then become the program manager, the umbrella that keeps it all together. It will go back to tier 2 which is what we're really good at: pattern of life investigations, data analytics, targeting, things like that.
Right. It sounds like you're just trying to help create this subset of you within the native culture. Absolutely. So that they can work it, and then you have to shift back to another situation,
and we'll still support it forever. We'll still support it forever. And so that's where like guys like Cyrus and Jeremiah from War Party Ranch, and Bernadine from Four Corners Canine, which is she's Navajo. She's got a great program down there as well. Like, we're bringing in all these native nonprofits to support what we're doing. And we're just adding value with the program management and doing what we do best from a tech and data perspective. But this is the most important priority of Traverse Project for 2025.
Right.
And I love that. It's been incredible.
I love that. And Cyrus too. I love Cyrus too. And so anything to help, I mean, he on the show, he was talking about how it's just wild, what happens on tribal lands. And, we can't forget that. And boy, oh boy. Yeah.
And I really do think that, this current administration, we have Christy Nome, who I know she had some issues with some of the tribes in South Dakota when she was the governor, but Christy Nome is now the Secretary of Homeland Security. Homeland Security is going to play a huge role in this. Traverse Project is partners with the Center for Countering Human Trafficking at HSI. It's kind of their kind of incubator, or not an incubator, but kind of their central brain for human trafficking programs, and they kind of coordinate everything from there.
Hopefully, they don't cut any funding to tribals, though, because they're in there right now with like axes and guillotines, cutting off funding to these.
I think funding is going to get cut wide, government wide for probably 6 months, which pushes back some of the plans that we had. But I really do think that with all the issues that tribal lands deal with through cartels. I mean, I was just on the phone 2 weeks ago with another tribe in Oklahoma who's like, yeah, we're dealing with, we have historically dealt with cartel issues here. I remember hearing from a deputy attorney general in another state. I don't want to, because it's under investigation, so I don't want to give it, but another state where they're dealing with organized crime out of Eastern Europe, in their casinos. So, it's just, there's so many problems that, bad guys, using air quotations, right, are kind of abusing the jurisdictional complexitions of the tribal lands. And it's just
money, dude. Money.
Yeah,
absolutely. The root of all evil right there.
But I can tell you right now, and I'll go on record of saying this, if you are abusing a child or a woman, if there is someone who is a bad guy focused in on one of the categories that falls under MMIP, my team is going to put a stop to what you're doing.
Is there a place that they can reach out to you and maybe say, hey, this is happening, I'd like to report this to you guys and let you investigate it? Is that on the traverseproject.org? Is there like a drop down where it's like submit?
So there will be. So there will be, as soon as this operations center gets stood up, there will be an email that you can send.
Be interesting to see.
Yeah.
What
now what I would suggest is that DHS or HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, has a tip line for any trafficking issues. Call that number and report what you need to report there. HSI is the agents that we've worked with from HSI are unbelievably dedicated to combating human trafficking, combating drug cartels, and everything else that kind of goes in that space. So I make the call, let them know what's going on.
I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, you too, man.
I mean, we've talked. I don't know if you realize it's been 1:20.
Wow.
So yeah, and usually it's like it just kind of flows, and I don't want to stop it, but I just want to say, if anybody out there has any ambition to reach out to the traverseproject.org, I would encourage you to do so if you want to see if there's a position probably there for you. Are you guys looking for, real quick, I'll give you like a minute. Are you looking for any veterans or anybody to join your organization right now?
So what we're, Supporting veterans is super important to me. So we are constantly looking for people that want to reclass as intel analysts or, targeters, things like that. We are always looking for interns. So if you're in college, you're using your post 9/11 GI Bill right now, and you want to do something good and learn some new skills, go over to the website, put in an application. One of our folks will get back to you like pretty much right away.
I love that.
Right now we have 3, let's see, 1 Air Force, 1 Army, 1 Marine, and the female's the Marine. All 3 of them. That's right. All 3 of them use their post 9/11 GI Bills at UC Berkeley to get their masters. We had partnered with UC Berkeley early days, and they said, "Wow, we love what you're doing," and wanted to stay on. And they are all 3 still here with Traverse 2 years later. So it's we are always looking for folks to join our fight.
I love that. I love that. And
TraverseProject.org.
Yes.
TraverseProject.org.
Traverse. Like you're traversing the mountain on a snowboard. I had to get that in my head.
Exactly.
TraverseProject.org.
Because it's not easy. We got to traverse.
No. Yeah, toe side.
Find us on Instagram. Find us on LinkedIn.
We'll have some of those things put into the dissertation down below when this goes on the website. So my listener out there, the viewer, you can just click on that once it's live, and you can go check out the TraverseProject.org. Traverse. See, I said it right.
You got it, man.
Now, on behalf of myself and Brandon Webb, who runs this whole SOFREP with his crew, and shout out to him, and shout out to you, and to Cyrus, and to your friend at the Canine, Four Corners Canine, and to Jeremiah. I'm just going to rehash that name. I like that name. I just want to say thanks for being on the show, and I wish you best of luck in your endeavor with Congress and all these budget situations that are happening. And in this day and age, I appreciate what you're doing, and just don't drive no Camaro, though. I just want to tell you right now, bro. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see. You understand that, right? I'm just like, what's the optics on that, right? Optics is what I'm all about, right?
Believe me, that was the least of his worries. I
know, bro. Show me some humbleness in your situation, then I'll donate. I still will donate you, but just be humble about it, bro. Absolutely. Don't have a better car than me.
I remember watching the very first interview that you did, that I saw, was the interview. It was a doctor down in Baja doing psychedelic
ayahuasca or something.
The Ibogaine, and I actually went to that because of your interview with him. So he's I appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate for you having us on to kind of spread.
Oh, you're sweet and sweet, but stay hard. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Yeah,
and I got you, and I appreciate it. Anytime you want to come and update us and let us know what's going on with your project, Task Force Red Hand, you're welcome here at SOFREP.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, this is Rad saying check out our merch store. Check out the book club, which is sofrep.com/book-club. And this is Austin Shamlin with the Traverse Project.org. Okay. And I want you guys to go check it out and make your own decisions and go from there. And thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Hey, cheers. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Sounds good, man.
All right. Peace.
See it.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.